It's my great pleasure to have the grand finale now. TJ Whalen has joined us. He is the Chief Strategy and Sustainability Officer at Green Mountain Coffee Roasters. And it's already interesting that that is part of one title. So I think that gives you an idea of what the company is all about. He has been working in this area for a few years and has also backgrounds originally in brand market development, all the way to like apparel and manufacturing. So broad background he brings to the table. He's now responsible for Green Mountain Coffee's overall strategy and their sustainability efforts. So a wonderful opportunity, and thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Daniel. So thank you, Kellogg and Aspen Institute, for having us here, and thanks to all of you in the audience for joining in the discussion, especially on a Friday afternoon. I'm more than pleased to be here to talk to you about partnerships, specifically between for-profit and not-for-profit organizations. Over the course of my career, which actually began here in Chicago with Leo Burnett, I've had the good fortune of working for quite a few different companies, but none that has quite the same approach to partnerships as Green Mountain Coffee Roasters does. And partnering is something that is very fundamental to our business model. Over the past year, we engaged hundreds of employees in an effort to redefine our company values, and they came up with these four specifically. We innovate with passion, we brew a better world, we play to win, and we partner for mutual success. And as Ben Packard said earlier today, which I thought was quite wise, we recognize that consumers today, especially younger consumers, buy a company's values as much as they buy a company's products. And our values-oriented culture is one of the things that I think makes us who we are, and it guides us as we strive towards our company purpose. And the company's purpose is really threefold. So we strive to create the ultimate beverage experience in every life we touch, from source to cup, transforming the way the world understands business. The second two parts of that are probably a little less obvious, which is from source to cup. And that speaks to our approach to value delivery across the entire value chain from producer to consumer. And we want to make sure that it's the ultimate experience for all of those participants. The other part of it is in the transformation of the way the world understands business, and that relates to our desire to demonstrate the efficacy of this business model. And so to hit on a theme from a bit earlier, we believe it's in our interest to do so, and we believe it's in others' interests as well, and we hope to create that model that can demonstrate that. So those of you who might know a little bit about Green Mountain Coffee Roasters might either think of the company as a socially responsible specialty coffee provider that grew up in Vermont, or you might think of us as an appliance maker with deep capabilities in systems design, engineering, mechanical functionality, fluid dynamics. And today, the reality is we're all of that. We are both of those things. And what I would say is, more than anything, we're an innovative, technology-driven, values-based personal beverage system company. And it's the partnership of those two different elements that create a very powerful business model. As I reflected on the opportunity to speak today and the notion of partnerships, and specifically the partnership that grew the company, which was between this Vermont kind of grassroots-oriented coffee company and this Boston-based technology company, I reflected on one of the early experiences I had at the company, and we were actually, I grew up on the coffee side of the business, and I've been there about 14 years. One of the early experiences for me was in negotiating with then partner Keurig around the opportunity to enter the at-home market. And I was discussing this with the founder and then CEO, Bob Stiller, and I had laid out our position and Keurig's position and kind of our respective points of view on a number of issues and where I thought we could get a concession or make a concession to try to bring these things together. And I recall Bob saying to me something along the lines of, well, that sounds like a very kind of adversarial, oppositional kind of negotiating strategy, and I'd like you to try something different. And what he suggested really kind of changed the way I thought of partnerships. He said, what I'd like you to try to do is get on the same side of the table with them and first try to understand the commonality of your interest. And then broaden that perspective to include all of those elements that you just outlined, and I bet you'll have a different outcome. So when he mentioned that to me, the company was less than $100 million in revenue and about as much in market cap. And today we're about $4.5 billion in revenue and some 16 or so billion in market cap. So that was a very personally valuable lesson for me, and I think a good one for the company. And that kind of growth is really only possible when you've got your partnership focused in a way that integrates your business values and your social values. So some of you also are probably wondering why Green Mountain Coffee Roasters, with our Keurig single cup brewer, was invited to this conference when the obvious lack of recyclability of our K-Cup portion packs is a concern to so many people, and I'm sure many of you in the audience as well. Well, it's a concern to us, and one that we're tackling head on. In fact, we've recently been communicating our intent to make, by 2020, 100% of our portion packs recyclable. This is an area where our consumers, our customers, and our partners have been asking for greater progress, and it's an area where we intend to make greater progress, but it is a very significant challenge, especially as our Keurig brewing systems continue to gain popularity and drive penetration, both in North America and soon to be internationally. So as with other business challenges, our approach will be to seek partnership with material science engineers, innovators, business partners, recycling agencies to help us find sustainable solutions to a very complex problem, but to do so in a way that creates long-term value for all of the participants. One of the other aspects of the Keurig system is its ability to offer a wide array of choices to consumers and customers. And that's a rather unique business model. In fact, if any of you own a Keurig brewing system, you probably are able to enjoy your favorite brand, whether it be Starbucks or Caribou or Dunkin' Donuts or Folgers or Swiss Miss or Snapple or some other 40-plus brands that span hundreds of products. And this rather unique model has us working across multiple dimensions with all of those partners to really delight the consumer. And it's that same approach with an open mind to partnership and value creation that we approach sustainability. So some say, sustainability is or isn't in a company's DNA. And I would say that's rarely true. And it wasn't exactly true for us. Sustainability really grew out of an expression of our employees' values. And it started rather modestly with recycling paper or turning down the heat in our offices. In fact, one winter night in Vermont, an overzealous group of our employees turned down the heat so much the pipes froze. And, like most grassroots efforts, it took many forms over the years. There was a time in the company's history that we had retail operations and would provide compost for consumers' gardens, which was popular in Vermont at the time. And it grew kind of randomly over time, specifically as different employees joined the business and wanted to express their values in different ways. And probably one of the smarter things we did was allow them to do so that allowed the company to grow and flourish as we grew and matured. We've now become a larger organization, and we've put a little more rigor and focus and structure behind our programs, and we've expanded our definition of community to include the producers of our coffee. And many of you probably don't know exactly how coffee is produced, but I will share that about 80% of the world's coffee production is delivered by very small landholders who typically produce on some 3 acres or so of land. And we began working in various ways to try to provide value for some of these producers. And that took a bunch of different forms over the years, scholarships and coffee bean drying patios, or a truck here or there for a cooperative to be able to take their product to the mill, to health clinics. And these were all very well-intentioned efforts that probably had some good outcomes, but we didn't really know if we were addressing these communities' most pressing needs. And so we asked ourselves, what is it really like to be one of these producers, one of these small landholders? And in 2007, we partnered with a group, the International Center for Tropical Agriculture, to interview hundreds and hundreds of coffee farming families in Nicaragua and Mexico and Guatemala, and we asked them dozens and dozens of questions. And one theme emerged that really surprised us, and that was hunger, food insecurity. We learned that 67% of these producers faced chronic food insecurity for a range of 3 to 8 months. They were not able to adequately feed their family. We were blown away by this. We had been in the coffee business for quite a few years prior to that. We had been working with lots of different partners in the coffee business, and yet we had never heard of this. And it was quite a shock to us. This period of time, which happens after the harvest, actually has its own name in these different regions. In Mexico, it's called Los Meses Flacos, the thin months. In Nicaragua, it's called the Flaca Vaca, the thin cow or skinny cow. And it's so pernicious that it's widely known in these communities, but rarely talked about in their north-south relationships because it's a difficult topic for all these folks to address. And we had known that there were many, many challenges in our supply chain, but this research fundamentally changed our approach to social outreach in coffee-growing communities. And the thin months, which is clearly a pressing humanitarian and business issue for us, we felt needed to be addressed because, after all, if you're a coffee producer within our supply chain and you can't adequately feed your family, you probably are a little less concerned about producing as high a quality coffee or fulfilling your contract with us as either of us might like. And so we set about working with partners to try to figure out some solutions. And we reached out to those both within and outside of the coffee industry, governmental, non-governmental, for-profit, not-for-profit, basically anybody who was willing to work with us on this issue. Fortunately, we had a fairly extensive history or experience in reaching out to not-for-profit partnerships. It started probably back in 1990 with a product we brought to market called Rainforest Nut that used some Brazil nuts. And it was in partnership with Rainforest Alliance and Conservation International, and that kind of opened up a whole range of products that had some social or environmental benefit or funding mechanism attached to it. In 2004, we partnered with Heifer International, thank you, Carol, to bring to market something called Heifer Hope Blend that was fair trade organic coffee designed to support heifers' fight against hunger, and that partnership continues to exist today. We're early supporters of coffee-growing, health-oriented NGOs like Grounds for Health and Coffee Kids, or kind of social benefit perspectives like Habitat for Humanity in some of the coffee-growing regions. And wherever possible, we worked with organizers at source, recognizing that we probably didn't know nearly as much about what some of these communities needed as the folks that were a little closer to the issues. And really, what we believe at the end of the day is that we share a common goal with these NGOs and with the producers, which is to enable a sustainable supply of high-quality coffee that supports a higher quality of life for the participants. So we found that common set of interests. Fair Trade USA also turned out to be an excellent partner for us in this respect, because that helped provide us with the visibility and the transparency within the supply chain to enable us to begin working with these communities. And we're pleased that we continue to be the world's largest buyer of Fair Trade certified coffee, and we look to expand upon that, as we believe it's a start towards addressing some of these issues, but it doesn't go nearly far enough. And so we reached out to a number of our competitors in the coffee business, Counterculture, Farmer Brothers, Starbucks, and many others, and collectively we formed the Coffee Lands Food Security Coalition. And besides natural disaster relief, this was really the first pre-competitive effort amongst the coffee industry to really try to solve an industry-wide problem. And the first pilot of this was with Mercy Corps in a Nicaraguan nonprofit. And it's a 3-year program to improve farming techniques and develop additional sources of income through home gardens and crop production, and engage more effectively with local Nicaraguan governments. And we're committed to building this into a bigger movement, but as you heard earlier, raising awareness for issues is one of the necessary ingredients of that. And so one of the ways that we attempted to do that was with a film, a short film, and it was designed to raise awareness for seasonal hunger in the coffee industry. It's narrated by Susan Sarandon. I'm not going to show you the whole film, but I'll play a little clip that will hopefully give you a glimpse of the magnitude of this issue and a start at some of the solutions, which I'll talk about briefly.
Throughout the world, over 25 million people earn their living by growing coffee. The vast majority of these farmers are paid only once a year after they have delivered their coffee. For the rest of the year, farmers and their families are often forced to stretch their money and their food supply until the next year's harvest. The result is seasonal hunger, an experience so common that from Mexico to South America, it has its own name, Los Meses Flacos, the thin months.
Y los meses terribles son de 3 a 4 meses, lo que ya comienza, lo que es ya de abril para allá. Y ya terminando la fase de cosecha y corte, y ahí lo más que pasa son unos 2 meses todavía manteniendo con lo que es la cosechita de café, pero de ahí para allá son 3, 4 meses que son terribles. Uno tiene que buscar cómo hacer para vivir en la casa.
And increasingly, our global trading system has leaned toward the specialized production of commodities, which is very efficient in certain ways, but it does bring considerably higher levels of risk in certain remote areas where farmers cannot readily depend on markets, on viable markets, to secure food, because they're all growing much the same thing in a region. So the risk is elevated when you're dealing with commodities of any sort. Coffee is one of them, but all of them face the same challenge.
No podemos estar tan pobres y somos los productores, somos los dueños de la materia prima.
One of the key strategies in fighting hunger is helping coffee farmers return to a more diversified farm. Coffee cooperatives, nonprofits, and the specialty coffee industry are supporting pilot projects that teach fruit and vegetable production, food preservation techniques, and how to market what they produce locally as an additional source of income.
Me crié en una familia muy pobre y yo sé que yo de pequeña he trabajado así de doméstica y eso mientras uno no trabaja, no come.
A 3-year project headed by international nonprofit Save the Children is helping 750 families in northern Nicaragua. Many of these families live on less than $1 a day. Critical to their survival is the ability to grow food as well as coffee. Here, the practice of creating home gardens is being reintroduced. Save the Children is supporting families with training and with seeds.
El proyecto significa, primero, que es una seguridad alimentaria, que el mismo nombre lo dice, que es una seguridad alimentaria.
The whole specialty coffee industry is focused on quality, and I think companies need to step back and take a look at the basis of quality. Families who are growing specialty coffee, particularly small-scale farmers, will invest in quality only after they're able to feed their own families. They're not going to feed their coffee plants before they feed their families. So this is the challenge. We have an industry that's very focused on sustainability, and yet here is something that is just so fundamental to life and also to quality coffee that it really needs to be dealt with on an industry-wide scale.
The thin months arrive with the rainy season in Central America. While the landscape is lush, farmers' pockets are by now almost empty. Heavy rains and frequent landslides make it difficult for farmers to grow their own food or to get it to market. The food that is available is often beyond the farmer's reach.
El frijol, bueno, el azúcar sí se sube mucho el precio. Más ahorita en el tiempo de agua, pues que a veces nosotros no tenemos muchos recursos y a veces nos vemos muy difícil pues, para comprar todas las cosas para pasar el tiempo de agua.
Como ser humano y como padre que es uno, va, el trabajo, el esfuerzo que hace uno es para los hijos, pues. Lo poco que tiene uno es mejorarlo, pues, para que los hijos no lleguen a sufrir, pues, carencias.
Heifer International is a global nonprofit dedicated to ending hunger and poverty through a community-based partnership approach. In southern Mexico, Heifer is working directly with coffee-growing communities to diversify their sources of food and income so they are not completely dependent on coffee.
Para uno, pues, nos va bien, pues, porque ya tenemos otro tipo de ingreso, tenemos otros trabajos, ya no solo el café, porque a veces también es cansado. Yo buscándole, pues, de cómo tener, pues, también para la papa, ¿verdad? No solo quedar así seco, pues,
If your business partner in any business was starving, was facing periods of chronic malnutrition or illness, would you not be interested in addressing that? So once we know, once we see these hidden causes, I think it's incumbent upon us to do something about it if we're calling ourselves partners. Working with them, providing what they need, really makes a difference in the long run. It's what distinguishes real developmental impact from charity.
So that was the start of the awareness building within the industry. Once we understood the extent of this issue within our own supply chain, we realized that we needed to dig a little deeper and try a little harder. It formed the basis of how we refocused our grant making, specifically at the household level, to address this issue in particular. And one of the approaches that we took was to reach out both within our supply chain to the coffee cooperatives and work with their management, who were motivated to solve this issue because they're really member-based organizations and they want a strong membership. But they really didn't have the skills to address this type of an issue systemically. We also reached out to NGO partners who had the skills to address this type of an issue, but didn't necessarily have the connectivity to the communities that the cooperatives did. And it was in that partnership of bringing together the NGOs and the cooperatives with some funding from us and others that began to form the seeds of what I think is a pretty promising effort. So, for example, in Nicaragua, we partnered with one of our cooperatives, Kellogg-Aspen, to organize a summit where we might uncover what potential solutions could exist to this issue, and we listened. And the producers came up with a number of great ideas, including income diversification, crop diversification, metal silos to effectively hold grains through some of the thin months. In Mexico, we worked with Sesmach, another cooperative, to provide thousands of fruit trees, and that helped the farmers diversify their income stream and also provide additional food and nutrition. We found that both the cooperative leaders and the NGOs were excited about some of these outcomes. And one of our longest standing partnerships, as I said, is heifer. And in Mexico, we supported a heifer project that delivered turkeys and sheep and pigs and chickens and rabbits, and families that up until that point had been entirely dependent solely on coffee for their income, now suddenly had a range of choices available for them that they could produce and sell in local markets. Some were taught to cultivate mushrooms for local resale. Others began keeping bees to make and sell organic honey. And one of the first food security projects in 2008 included 250 families. Since then, our support has grown to around 100,000 families, or roughly 500,000 individuals in over a dozen countries. One of those individuals is Juana Valleo in El Coyolar, Nicaragua. You might recognize her from the video. Her family farms coffee in a small plot of land near their home. And when we first started work there, her coffee plants were under-pruned and under-fertilized and frankly not very productive. Through the food security project we funded, Juana learned how to use organic fertilizer, and that has helped increase her plant yields and generate some income. She also learned how to grow various fruits and vegetables and provide marmalade to her family and sell at a local market. And the next time we visited Juana, we learned that her plants were thriving. And she also had an elaborate system of stakes and wires that held up passion fruit that she was growing for these marmalades. And she told us that because of this project, this was the first time that in her life she had been able to close that window of food insecurity. Very encouraging. Last year, the same group that we commissioned the study with back in 2007 went back to the same communities to get an update for their reports. And they said, and I quote, "There was an important and statistically significant overall decrease in the number of months of food insecurity reported by families at all sites. This shows irrefutable evidence that the situation has improved for most of these families. This is especially true in Guatemala, where the average of thin months decreased from 4.22 average months in 2007 to 2.83 in 2013. So that's progress, but clearly not enough. And you also might recognize that coffee is just one part of our business. And if you own a Keurig brewing system, you probably know that we aren't just a coffee company. And you might have heard that earlier this month we announced a partnership with the Coca-Cola Company to introduce a new Keurig cold platform. And we believe we can do for cold beverage what we've done for hot, which is fundamentally allow the consumer to have a wide range of choice that enables them to conveniently enjoy a beverage of their liking at the press of a button. And as a company, we have these two very different supply chains. Coffee, agricultural supply chain. And these brewers are totally different. They're produced in a network of contract manufacturing companies in the Far East, including China. And the packaging for K-Cup comes from an even more extensive and complex network of suppliers. And it's our goal to become as familiar with these other aspects of our supply chain as we are with our coffee agricultural supply chain, because the same holds true for this part of our business same principle or value, which is long-term relationships with suppliers can lead to long-term supply of high-quality products and mutual value delivery. And so we believe that relationships and the influence that we have with our suppliers can help improve working conditions in those factories, bolster communities, reduce the environmental impacts, and produce the highest quality products. One way we build these connections is to help our manufacturers understand our social and environmental expectations. And so we're on a path to release updated supplier guidelines that more clearly articulate what requirements we have for doing business, which include parameters around migrant labor, child labor, business integrity, indigenous people. And we're enabling quarterly scorecards that measure progress across multiple dimensions, and these social and environmental expectations are baked into the overall business deliverables for each of these partners. It's not an add-on or an afterthought. Sustainability needs to be a part of how we do business together. And we recognize it's not enough to just implement guidelines or standards. We need to be more proactive in how we address some of these issues. And we've got some early ideas on this, how this might work. For example, we're enabling manufacturing summits where we bring together all of our manufacturing partners, many of whom are competitors with each other, to talk about these issues: health, safety, social issues, conflict, minerals, how we'll address these topics together. We also, for the first time this year, created a pilot with our largest brewing manufacturer supplier to enable them to create community outreach within their labor force and develop a series of life skills management courses that allow them to speak to career planning, or how to deal with conflict, or how to communicate with your colleagues or your supervisors. And so for the first time, up to 8,000 of the employees within this contract manufacturing environment will have the benefit of these efforts. Beyond our supply chain, partnerships also are important to us as it relates to our employees. And as I mentioned at the start of this talk, the culture and the values of the company really come from our employees, and so it's our mission to allow them to pursue their own interests, and we give all of our full-time employees up to 52 hours of paid time off to volunteer for whatever cause they find to be important, and many of these employees volunteer for causes that also receive community grant funding from the company, so we can be twice as effective. And finally, we're also tackling new pressing challenges that will require new collaborative partnerships. And this is intended to address what I think is probably one of our most precious resources, which is water. And so we'll soon announce a collaboration with a series of nonprofit partners to bring conservation, protection, and access to clean, fresh water to up to 1 million people by 2020. And our other sustainability goals for the year 2020 will be released later this month in our sustainability report. Yes, we're still producing one, and we still see value in it. Thank you. And so I'll give you kind of a sneak peek at some of those other goals, which include engaging over 1 million people in our manufacturing and agricultural supply chains to significantly improve their livelihoods, to source 100% of our primary agricultural and manufactured products according to our responsible sourcing guidelines, and as I said, to make 100% of our portion packs recyclable. None of this will be possible without partnerships with nonprofits, with other for-profits, NGOs, our employees, suppliers, perhaps others in this room. And so, as I think about moving forward, in the spirit of partnership, I'll serve up 3 challenges or opportunities to the audience here. And these three are probably more relevant to those that either work with for-profit partners or are in the private sector, or maybe someday will work within the private sector. And the fourth one will be relevant to everyone in this room. So number one, get to know your supply chain down to the individual if possible. Successful long-term partnerships require this level of familiarity, and this is the way you're going to know what's really going on. Number two, partner with people who have on-the-ground expertise. As I said, we didn't know exactly where to turn to begin to address some of these issues in our source communities, but other people who had boots on the ground certainly did. And number three, work with your competition. Some of these projects or programs or issues are so big and so complex that one entity alone will not be able to address it. The fourth one relates to the lesson I learned early in my career here, which is try to find yourself on the same side of the table with whomever you're negotiating with, and you'll be much more likely to find a common outcome. And so, as we look to redefine partnership and what it means, we've seen that collaboration gives us what we believe to be a competitive advantage. We've found success in partnerships by looking at it differently, and competitors don't always compete at every level. At some level, they can be your partners. And ultimately, we've learned that relationships based on mutual trust, transparency, and respect are what drive our business, and hopefully will continue to allow us to be successful in the future. Thank you very much.
I want to thank TJ for this keynote at the end. And
Thanks.
I think it reminded all of us both of what the challenges are, things I didn't know about the seasonal hunger and the coffee among the coffee growers, what the opportunity for change is. And I think what we also try to do throughout these days is to talk about the challenges. So this tension of kind of opportunity and challenges, I think, is at least what we hope made this conference unique and interesting. We wanted to have a conversation, and we wanted to we wanted to go beyond the slogans and look really at the nitty-gritty of how this gets done and what the challenges are. We had tremendous insights. We had great discussions. We had controversy and debate. And I think that's really what the point of view, or that's what the purpose of an academic institution is, to provide a forum for this type of exchange. I hope you found it valuable. I want to thank especially the people that came from far away to join us for this day and a half. Please stay in touch. We'd love to hear ideas also about where we want to take this next. Thanks again for coming. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and let's take on the next challenge. Thank you.